and gentlemen, thank you. So, it is my great honor to take us into our next transition. We are going to have now our two candidates for mayor, our incumbent, Steve Allender, and the challenger, Natalie Stites will each be given an opportunity to address you. The rules of engagement are as follows. The opening speeches are 3 minutes each. We flipped a coin ahead of time, and so Mr. Allender will get to go first, and then we will flip-flop who is first throughout the questions. We will be taking questions from the floor, but I've also received a very good number of very excellent questions that are in writing, and I intend to ask some of those interspersed. So we'll kind of be back and forth. For each of those, the candidates will only get 2 minutes to answer, and then they'll each have a 5-minute summary speech at the very end where they can answer and address any concerns that they didn't get to. We ask you, no, we beg you, we implore you, keep your questions very short, and please keep them questions. We are here to learn about what the candidates think, and while we care a lot about what you think, and they especially care a lot about what you think, please form questions and ask them for their opinions and for their positions.
Can we turn off the advertising?
I don't know about that.
Kind of distracting.
Yeah.
All right, we have a request to turn off the advertising. Gentleman finds it distracting.
And the projector keeps glaring.
Oh, and it's glaring at the candidates, so all the more reason. But we deeply appreciate all of the people who made this happen. So pay attention to the advertising one last time before it goes off.
I got the clerk on the time on the introduction opening statements.
3 minutes.
Okay.
The candidates have a formal and dedicated timekeeper. They'll get a 1-minute warning in the opening statement, when there's 1 minute left, that is, and then 1 minute left in the closing. And their questions, where they each get 2 minutes, he's just going straight to red. So you got to time it in your head. So with that, as I indicated, Mr. Allender gets the first chance to address you. Mr. Allender, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Steve Allender, and I'm the current mayor of Rapid City. I've been mayor 4 years. It's been a fast 4 years for me. Prior to that, I was retired for several months. And prior to that, I spent 29 years with the Rapid City Police Department. So I've been in Rapid City since 1985, been in public service for 34 years, and I've enjoyed it. I had a huge misconception when I first took the job as mayor. I believed it was going to be the worst job I ever had. The environment was terrible at City Hall, in my opinion, and I have spent the last 4 years, and I believe we've seen a number of changes at City Hall in terms of the City Council, the quality of the overall city administration, and the partnerships that we've formed throughout the community. I'm proud to have been mayor the last 4 years. It's not a job I ever thought I would want. It's not a job I feel like I need, but I've grown over the last 34 years to love this community for reasons that I probably can't adequately explain, but more so as a caretaker or a caregiver for Rapid City, for the people that live here, the people who have needed help. Now, admittedly, I spent 29 years getting to know the people that were mostly having trouble with their lives, trouble handling their own circumstances. These last 4 years, I've gotten to see and engage with a number of great community partners that have worked with us side by side to continue to make Rapid City the best place ever. As far as me personally, I am married to my wife Shirley, sitting out here for 30 years. We have 2 adult children, one on the East Coast and one here in this area. We have 2 dogs, and I love coming to work every day. It's a good position to be in. I feel like we're really doing some good in Rapid City. The 2 compliments I get that are really charge me up is, number 1, there's a lot of things going on in Rapid City. I get that all the time. And number 2, the vibe is different in Rapid City now than what it used to be. It's much more positive. and in a positive environment, everybody grows. So I'm here, I have energy, I'm still young enough, and I'm energized to keep working with Rapid City and making this the greatest place in the nation. Thank you.
Stites means 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Natalie Stites Means. I am running for mayor of Rapid City. It has been an honor to put myself before the people as a leader. I have a Juris Doctor from the UCLA School of Law, and I specialized in public interest law and policy. I graduated about 12 years ago. After law school, I decided to return to my homelands and to Indian country in order to serve my people. My Lakota name is Wo'awachini Sutawi, and it means strong-intentioned woman. And I was given that name because I decided to help my people like my grandmother asked me to. And I came back from California. I spent a couple of years working for Wisconsin in a tribal court environment for a chief judge, working on child support, child protection, and other issues affecting the Ho-Chunk Nation of Wisconsin. After that, I came to South Dakota to work for my own tribe in Eagle Butte, South Dakota. And I have been working for tribal governments and nonprofit organizations since then. My most recent position was with the University of Oklahoma Medical School. I worked remotely, actually, for a national training and technical assistance center for tribal youth programs that focus on juvenile justice throughout the United States. So I worked on a national level with tribes as well as a state level with tribes on very important issues like children exposed to violence, trauma-informed policing, as well as domestic violence and the status of our families. What I found through this work is that it takes all of us to help our people, non-natives and natives working together to uplift our communities and our families. Excuse me. Before I went to law school, I was actually the first Native American in California to be awarded the prestigious Assembly Fellowship. And I worked for elected officials in Sacramento, California. And I saw the limitations and struggles of that state and really visionary solutions to addressing those. My platform is a unifying platform for Rapid City. It is one city, all voices. And it's rooted in the values of compassion, unity, and prosperity. As a challenger in this race, I'm bringing an outsider's perspective to this. And I'm not beholden to any political party, entity, or clique, or group. I'm a working person. I was laid off from my job in December after the federal grant ran out, and I'm a private consultant now with the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. I have a 5-year-old daughter who I want to have a wonderful future here in Rapid City, and I'm doing this for her. Thank you for your time, and thank you for this opportunity to speak before you.
Thank you, and we will start then. Ms. Stites means you will have the first opportunity to answer this. I am going to take the liberty, ladies and gentlemen, of combining a couple of the questions that were submitted, and hopefully we'll get to all of the topics more effectively that way. And so the question that is posed, actually on a couple of different sheets here, I think it can be summarized by this one, which is, do you have a plan on how you would like to improve race relations in Rapid City? But I would also combine that with another question that was received. Can you show from what you've done in the campaign the work that you have done to have a thorough understanding of all community groups? Ma'am, you get the lead.
I have a nine-point platform as part of One City, All Voices, and one of those is increasing racial understanding here in Rapid City. It is not just Native Americans here. We have very diverse, you can tell from the audience, a lot of diversity here. We have a diversity of backgrounds in terms of non-natives. We have diversity of backgrounds in terms of gender, sexual orientation. We have a diversity of economic classes as well. You have people who have inherited wealth for a few generations, and you have people who've gotten their bootstraps and did the work and have made their way in their own lives today. Increasing racial understanding is critical to moving forward. I think it's a source of national shame that the nickname for Rapid City is Racist City, and I want to change that. That's not an appropriate nickname, but that is one that is out in the community, and that is out and nationally. What can we do to repair that reputation? I think that we need to offer more than what's been offered thus far by city government and our city and county leaders and our state leaders as well. Increasing racial understanding means funding, for example, a robust human relations commission. It means supporting municipal level ordinances and legislation in order to protect vulnerable people at the city level. This includes our LGBTQ community as well as women. In terms of Native Americans, I actually, I don't really use my resume, so to speak, in this race, but I have provided technical assistance and training opportunities to an entity, actually the Public Defender's Office, in regards to the MacArthur Foundation and the Safety and Justice Challenge initiative that Pennington County is a part of. And I've really worked to provide alternatives to what is currently in place, and that are informed by evidence and that are informed by the facts. And I think that with my leadership, we can progress into a new era of race relations here in Rapid City. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. I have been around the city of Rapid City and its operations for decades. I have seen mayors come in, various council members come in and start things such as task forces to put an end to racism. It's my observation that with every political attempt to resolve a condition that is so personal in nature, it rarely lends any improvement to that situation. So I made a promise when I came into office that I would not be further politicizing race relations. I would not start a race relations task force because I think it's a disservice. I have believed for a long time that my role as a city leader is to provide equal treatment to all under the law, rather than singling out specific groups of people to provide extra or special protection. We do have a Human Relations Commission, and we have seen a number of difficulties with that. The legal authority of the city is very limited in how it can resolve major conflicts. And I've spent a lifetime, longer in public service than not in public service. I've spent a lifetime coming to understand the various community groups. And so I'm committed to working with the agencies from the community that seek to solve racial problems within this community. Those groups are far more successful and will have greater success into the future than any temporary politician can ever have. Thank you.
All right, I believe it might be a moment for a question from the audience. Where's our microphone? All right. We have a microphone in the back. Is there anyone who'd like to pose a question? If not, we've got some good ones posed up here. All right.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Monique Muffy Musso. I'd like to send a warm handshake to each and every one of you here tonight. This is a fabulous turnout. I really appreciate it. I am from the LGBTQ Two-Spirit Native American. My tribe is Oglala Dakota. I'm an ex-police officer. I used to work with Mr. Allender when he was a police officer here in Rapid City. I have many, many stories. Some of them not good. But my question to both of you, would be, I would like to see a Ward 6, and if we do, can we go about having just Ward 6 represented by Native American community? That's it. And if there's Native Americans in Ward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, then they can run in those wards as well. But we need to have, can that be researched? And would you be willing to present that for just Native Americans because of the treaty rights?
Mr. Allender, it's your turn to go first.
Thanks for the question. I think to cut to the answer first, I think the answer is no. Primarily because this country has a long history of gerrymandering, changing voting district lines to accommodate or exclude certain races of people. I believe there's been a number of court rulings on the practice of gerrymandering. And so I don't see a way. The wards are constructed geographically. And so today, there is no specific Native American community in Rapid City. Native Americans live in every single ward. I'm talking geographically. They live in every ward. All the wards are represented here. So, no ward is populated exclusively with Native Americans. I don't think it's practically possible. It's probably not legally possible. But I sense that what your question is getting to is how do we get Native American representation on the city council? And that is an important question, but if we look around, this is 2019, we have 6 candidates for elected office who are Native American. That is really something to celebrate in Rapid City. 12% of our population on a daily basis, permanent population, is Native American. Far more than that from day to day, transient, traveling back and forth to other locations. So I feel your pain. I think we're at the beginning of what you're asking for, and that is more Native American representation on the city council. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. My opponent has alleged in some television ads that I haven't seen yet that that Rapid City isn't ready for a radical change. And I don't think that what we're offering here by participating in democracy is a radical change. We're participating. This is progress for Rapid City. We have 6 Native American candidates on the ballot. We have made national news. We have made history for Rapid City. I think the mayor needs to be a champion of the public interest and of every single resident here in Rapid City. And to that end, I would very much be interested in looking at different ways in which to reorganize wards. One of the reasons why I'm running for this at-large position is definitely looking to voter reapportionment that's coming up after the census, and looking at a true count of Native Americans and our political power here in Rapid City and throughout South Dakota. I don't know if you're aware of it, but South Dakota has one of the most lawsuits of any of the Great Plains states in terms of voting rights. We were featured, and this fact was featured at a hearing on voting rights by Congresswoman Fudge up in North Dakota, in Cannonball actually, at the Prairie Knights Casino just a couple weeks ago. I was actually asked to join them because I'm in an active race, I declined, but I did want to discuss these very issues about our representation. And I think that while wards are constructed based on residency and natural neighborhoods, there's a number of legal requirements one needs to meet when you kind of carve out these voting districts. And what I found through this race and getting involved in this one is that why is Ward 2 and Ward 4 divided that funny way it is? If it was divided the way that naturally should be, according to everything that I've learned in law school and in my experience on voting rights, we would have a Native American representative on city council. So with that, my time is up, so thank you.
So I'll take one now. Ms. Stites Means, you will be first. Affordable housing is and will continue to be a need for Rapid City. How can the city further address this need and incentivize development?
I don't like the term affordable housing. I think we need to change that term. We need to talk about homes and building homes for families to grow and thrive in here in Rapid City. Affordable housing puts it into the realm of federal housing projects and that sort of talk. And I don't think that really represents what we're talking about. We're talking about ordinary working people being able to buy homes and being able to make their lives in them here in Rapid City, to spend their paychecks here for the duration of their lifetime, to spend their retirement here, to send their kids to school here. So when we're talking about affordable housing, I really like to think about it in terms of who are Rapid City's working families and how can they live here and be supported in a way that will create a thriving community for all of us. I think there are a number of subsidies that one can, or not subsidies, but there's a number of ways in which to approach the Housing and Urban Development Agency. I think that our community, the city level community development agency, definitely needs to get some work done on it. We need to have a leader, a champion in charge of that agency who will seek the resources and the private-public partnerships that are essential to building the homes that Rapid City needs. And so I think that we really do need to bring people to the table. We don't just need to hear from builders, right? We need to hear from people who want to buy homes someday. You know, we need to empower our youth at age 18 to start thinking ahead to when are they going to buy their home? When are they going to get married? When are they going to choose their careers? So we need to reframe this discussion from sort of this, oh, you know, I need my TIF and who has this grant and all this kind of talk to a comprehensive plan. I think too, looking back to the 2014 comprehensive plan for Rapid City that's codified into law and authorized by law is a good place to start. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Affordable housing is one of those things when we started talking about it a few years ago, now we've got everybody talking about it and not a lot of people doing it. The definition, generally speaking, of affordable housing is housing that's available to the middle and lower class people who can pay for the cost of housing with less than 30% of their wage. And that can be quite challenging for someone who is living at the poverty level, the $20,000 or less income. What's needed and what we've started to construct at City Hall is an affordable policy housing, because it is a valid question to say, how can the city be for affordable housing when it's not actively doing anything specifically for affordable housing? There's a disincentive for building affordable homes, and that is the profit that cannot be made on building affordable homes. So who will front the money, who will pay it? One of the things that we can do right now is accessory dwelling units. The council is mulling over a policy on accessory dwelling units. That's renting your basement or your upstairs or building a house in the backyard, and that will create housing that will vacate other housing options. We need more houses generally in Rapid City. We're about 200 to 300 houses under the market, so the costs are artificially high. Our incentives are small. We have tax increment financing, and we have land that the city has been acquiring in small pieces to be able to gift in a private-public partnership in order to create affordable housing. But our incentives in city government are very shallow, and that's what's going on. So a policy will help us understand the problem better and will help us find the right path to getting it done. Thank you.
All right, do we have a question from the audience? There you go.
Stuart Flannery here. I've got a question for both our mayoral candidates here. Our indigenous population is the most killed and brutalized population per capita by the police. And so I was wondering, what are your solutions to the obvious problem of police brutality against our indigenous population, and what can we do to further de-escalate our police force?
Mr. Allender, will you be first on this question?
Okay, thanks for the question. I think there are statistics that might paint a slightly different picture of what you're alleging here. I don't know where your source is, but our police department has gone through for a decade or more de-escalation techniques. They've all gone through special training to de-escalate those mentally folks suffering from mental illness or addictions, and there is been great progress made. So at the heart of your question might also be, why are Native Americans taking up the most space in our jails? That's a real statistic that doesn't need to be proven to anybody. I think we all know this. There are some issues with that, but I can tell you it's not the easy answers like the police must be arresting only Native Americans. There are family issues, rooted issues in poverty and dysfunction that everyone in that jail, black, yellow, red, and white, all share. It's the family dysfunction of being brought up in a violent or an addicted household. There's all types of evidence to back this up. We have paid for studies from USD to come out here, Governmental Research Bureau, to help us understand why we have contact with more Native Americans and way out of range per capita. And there's some very interesting statistics there, so I can't validate what you're saying. I do not believe police brutality is a problem in Rapid City, and I wouldn't even know off the top of my head if what you said is true about there are more Native Americans killed by Rapid City police. Thank you.
Ms. Stites.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I think that the data that you're talking about is out of the Center for Disease Control, actually. And per capita, Native Americans do experience the highest level of officer-involved shootings as victims. I can argue with maybe my opponent wants to argue with the Center for Disease Control, but it is an established fact. And there are really complex reasons for why we are experiencing this as Native Americans. I do want to note as well that mentally ill people are actually, when you look outside racial and ethnic categories, it is mentally ill people who are also experiencing excessive force and death by officer-involved shootings. The Rapid City Police Department deserves to be commended for their participation in the Collective Healing Initiative. I think that's really has begun some really important conversations on how to address the trauma that police officers endure and go through on the streets. And I think also talking about the healing that the community needs in terms of seeing regular, ordinary citizens killed by police. And I want to note something I think that's really important is that, criminality is not limited to the poor. Criminality is not limited to working people. In fact, when we look at sex crimes and we look at violence, domestic violence in particular, as well as homicide, and we look at drugs, those are actually well represented across all ethnic and racial and economic classes and groups. So to be stigmatized with the idea that somehow Native Americans in Rapid City carry the burden of all criminality in Rapid, it doesn't match the facts. It doesn't match my study of the law. It doesn't match our federal, state, and county level data that is provided. I encourage everyone to go to the MacArthur Foundation website the Safety and Justice Challenge Initiative to find out about the important issues in regards to this very issue. Thank you.
And we'll start again with you. With the upcoming growth of Ellsworth Air Force Base, what are some of the ways that you believe Rapid City can capitalize on the increased number of people, skills, and industry that should be coming into the region? Ma'am, I believe you're first.
We need to welcome all of the people coming in through the Ellsworth. I understand right now the current status is they have a $350 million economic impact here on the city, as is, with the 3,000 plus enlisted folks right now and 7,000 plus dependents. And you know, a lot of those people are spouses who need support and who need jobs as well. Their children, they need education, they need schools as well. I think really focusing and centering the needs of active military as well as people transitioning from active military to veteran status, and then focusing on the veterans themselves. They don't need honors and tributes. They need to have their real needs addressed. Our veterans have real needs. Our active duty military have real needs. I think that being an inclusive and diverse city, and I think prioritizing working families, because our military families, they're working families. They're not wealthy. They certainly are not wealthy. They take advantage of all the benefits that they're very much entitled to and deserve to have here as serving our country in the military. I'm the daughter of military veterans. In fact, I was born on the Fort Womack Hospital of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. My parents met in the United States Army, and that is how a man from Indiana, Washichuna native, met a Lakota woman here from South Dakota, was in the Army. I think that my experience, my personal experience, is really typical of our families. There's a lot of diversity within military families. You know, when I go to Walmart, when I see there's some really diverse folks, like a whole family of Filipinos, I'm like, wow, they're from the base. You know, and you go and you say hi and you smile and they tell you right where they're coming from. So I think that, and in terms of what I'm offering the city and my candidacy, I think focusing on working families and bringing the right people to the table in terms of decision making is how we need to embrace the people coming in, embrace the base. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. It's a very important question. The B-21 bomber is coming to Ellsworth Air Force Base. There will be a time when the B-21 bomber is here and the B-1 bomber will both be here at the same time, so there will be a very significant overlap of both of those weapon systems. It's going to create a buildup for us not only in Rapid City, but all of the Hills communities. I think it's probable that we're going to need to work with the city and county planning and zoning to build perhaps a process that will more easily accommodate entire neighborhoods being built. I think we can refine some of the ways that we propose infrastructure for some of these new neighborhoods. And this is going to be a boost to Rapid City in obvious ways, but also in this way. We're going to have 1,000 or more additional workers in Rapid City. And the good news is we have jobs for them. We're lacking nurses and electricians and carpenters and all types of jobs from the trades into the professions, architects and engineers. And, so we have a lot of opportunities here. We're going to benefit from that, from the working spouses that come with. Rapid City has an obligation as the big brother of the Hills area communities to lead by example and make the most smooth transition for the incoming personnel and contractors, and to make that as easy and friendly and as least complicated as possible as they come into our communities. So we can all welcome them. That's something we all have in common. We all have a job to be the welcome wagon here. Thank you.
Do we have a question from the audience? coming to you.
Thank you. I have to say this. In the world, white skin is a badge of honor. If your skin is not white, you don't have that. I live that right here.
What's your question?
I'm making a point. The point
So we're asking
is
you to
that your skin color is a badge of honor anywhere in the world. And minority people with brown skin, we fight prejudice every day of our lives.
What's your question?
And my point is that we need a person that understands that, and that's her. She understands that.
All right, so I will pose a question then. Mr. Mayor, I'll start with you then. And I quote, "The Black Hills is a beautiful place to live, and I would like to see it that way." Person with beautiful handwriting, by the way. If elected, what do you view the role of Rapid City to be, and how would you work to protect the lands and waters of our region?
Thanks for the hard question. The role of Rapid City in the overall scheme of things is very limited. Our city ordinances can take effect up to 3 miles under certain conditions outside the city limits. We do have great relationships with other hills communities, both cities and counties. As far as preserving the Black Hills, we have National Park Service and the Game Fish and Parks who are primarily charged with that. We certainly bring people to Rapid City boasting of the beauty of the Black Hills. We all certainly have an interest in keeping the Black Hills beautiful. I believe the beauty of it and the safety of it, everything from firefighting to trail maintenance, I believe that is being expertly handled right now by the authorities in charge. So I'll always be there as an advocate to keep the Black Hills beautiful and accessible. I support the authorities that are in charge there. Recently, the Forest Service closed some trails because of mud. That is something that's done to do just that, to make sure that we're not trashing these places. I spend some of my time up in the hills and come to appreciate it, but other than being an example, working with hills communities and advocating for a clean, healthy, and accessible Black Hills National Forest, I think that's about the extent of Rapid City's authority and influence. Thank you.
Ms. Stites means.
Keeping the Black Hills beautiful is actually one of my 9 points on my platform. So thanks for that question. I think that the mayor needs to be a champion for the beauty of Rapid City. Right now we're looking at a process where our water supply might be threatened, and should a spill happen, in another part of the Black Hills, we have 26 minutes before all our water supply is contaminated. That's a real threat. That's a threat to us, that's a threat to our children, that's a threat to this earth. I'm a proud water protector. I stand for the water. I stand for Mother Earth, and I think that our voices deserve to be at the table as well, not just those who would seek to profit or exploit our resources and our public natural resources. And I think that the mayor and the Rapid City have great influence over how this will all play out here in the next few years in terms of how our natural resources will be used. I think when you look at, I know Howard didn't have a question, but he did have a point, and it is a matter of study, is looking at whiteness as property. And in that sense, looking at what is property and how are property rights accorded here. In a number of lawsuits throughout the country, there is, Mother Earth has been given standing. Future generations have been given legal standing to sue about the status of the earth. I remember the Defenders of Wildlife were sued on behalf of an endangered owl about 25 years ago, and I learned about that in public interest law as well. We have a, $4.6 billion tourist industry and $1.2 billion sales tax receipts here in Pennington County. And we're not going to get those tourists if we have a polluted Black Hills and Rapid City. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to take the liberty of combining a couple of questions again, because I believe this is the last question we'll get to pose for the candidates before they get to wrap up with whatever they would like to address you on. So Ms. Stites, this will begin with you. Are you concerned that the CARE campus and One Heart will centralize even more problems to the downtown core area? And in conjunction with that, do you have either ideas or plans to expand the quality of life unit with the Rapid City Police Department? Ma'am?
I actually have some pretty strong opinions about this. The reason why I'm running was because there was a anti-panhandlers or anti-negative behavior ordinance proposed at the city council level. And a number of us advocates, a number of us formerly homeless, a number of us who even actively homeless, a number of community advocates were totally shut out of having our opinions about the ordinance and it being a violation of civil rights of both free speech as well as race ignored. And so I think that the location of One Heart and the CARE campus seems to actually not centralize the problems. It recognizes that downtown is a gathering place for many of the clients that they need to serve and reach. So I think that's really simple. I think there's been an ugly history of no Indians allowed in downtown Rapid City. And I think that anti-panhandlers ordinance was a continuation of that type of thinking. And that thinking needs to be eradicated. That kind of thinking needs to be addressed. It needs to be discussed. It needs to be really prevented from going into the future because it's holding us back. It's holding us back from a high quality of life. I think that our Rapid City police officers, the average police officer on the streets, he shouldn't or she shouldn't be expected to be a social worker. She shouldn't be expected to be a mental health counselor and all these different roles for our police officers. Be a police officer, enforce the law. We don't need and if you want to be a mental health counselor, if you want to run a quality of life unit, then go into those helping fields, because that's not law enforcement. Law enforcement is a different animal than those fields of mental health. And I think that being informed about mental illness and trauma is important, and we all need that base level of understanding when we're serving the public. However, in terms of advancing expertise and putting city resources into things, we need to have our priorities straight and evaluate the effectiveness of our services and city-funded programs now. Thank you.
Well, I do not believe the One Heart location or the county's CARE campus location will centralize or ruin the downtown environment. That's been the dialogue out there with the people complaining about this since the mid to late 1980s when the Cornerstone Rescue Mission opened on Main Street. This One Heart campus and the County Care campus is the perfect location. Like it or not, as Natalie stated, the clients in need of those services are downtown. They are not out in a pasture somewhere outside of town. They will not stay out there. So we need to get that, we need to come to full understanding on that. This is downtown on purpose, and it's in the best location possible. Law enforcement, historically, probably since the Old West days, has been at least 50% social worker, no less than that. That's because all of the social service agencies, public and private, throughout our communities are unable or for some reason unwilling to handle the problems that need handled. So those things get pushed down the line to law enforcement. Law enforcement become the dumping ground for social service work, which is unfortunate because they are not primarily trained for that business. They are not the most capable in that business, and they do not specialize in the long-term effects or the long-term change. They are a triage. for problem solving. So that is out of proportion, that amount of time, and it's probably going to stay that way. But we have a commitment to the community to deal with what is handed to us. And I'll tell you this about the ordinance, it's needed. No amount of compassion for your fellow human can justify being abused when you're downtown trying to enjoy the environment. Thank you.
All right, well, as luck would have it, that means, Mr. Allender, that you are the first person to deliver your summary. You each have 5 minutes. You'll get a 1-minute warning on the yellow. So any questions that weren't addressed, and I apologize, I know there were some great ones written down, and I'm sure some great ones unspoken, but we tried to cover as much as we could, and I will leave it to the candidates to decide what our final topics are. Sir?
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for being here, and thank you to the organizations that combined their efforts for this. I think the turnout is much better. I hope we continue to do that into the future. It seems to be very successful for me. I have a long list of things that have been accomplished in the last 4 years. And I'm not sure I can go through it all in detail within my time. But I want to tell you that the list, which can also be found on my website, represents hard work. It represents coming to work every day and handling situations that are sometimes too uncomfortable or too unpleasant or not rewarding enough for other people, other organizations to handle. This is a government position. So the role of government always comes up with South Dakotans. There's someone always there saying, I'm not sure that's the role of government. And that's one of the things we like to bring to public officials' attention. So my assessment is a daily assessment of governmental responsibility. And I can tell you that over time, the demand coming from the people that we serve has changed over time. The amount of human service spending has necessarily risen over the last several years. The margins between the city incoming revenue and outgoing expenses have been shrinking over time. And so it's important for us to be looking for ways to become more efficient, to reject services that duplicate other services, and that government efficiency, that whole push towards government efficiency sometimes feels unfriendly. It may mean that you're getting a yoga class canceled, or it may mean that we're going to close a city shop or a golf course part of the year, but those things are being done in the greater interest of everyone. Here's what's going on in the coming couple of years. The Civic Center arena construction will be underway this fall. There will be a groundbreaking late summer, early fall this year. There's been a great amount of work going into that on the part of the city as far as managing the budget and working with the construction and architecture team. Embrace the Base is something that came from Elevate Rapid City. And it came from Elevate Rapid City specifically to find the areas in our relationship with Ellsworth Air Force Base and the National Guard camp that are making their experience less than optimal with us. The One Heart campus will become a reality in the next few years. The lot formerly known as President's Plaza, I believe, will start getting some press here by midsummer, and I think we're going to see a great development there. The early childhood education is something that we really need to focus on, and I used this example the other night, and I think it's a good one. The government agencies like ours, typically, if they were a firefighter, they would spray their water at the top of the flame, which does nothing. Might make it feel a little cooler there at the time, but that is not at the root of the fire. The water must be sprayed at the base or the root. And so diverting our attention from the symptoms down to the causes is something that we're going to see more of as time goes on here. So early childhood education is one of those things that not only Rapid City, but the entire state of South Dakota should support. And we need a master infrastructure development plan. We've seen some good examples lately in city council meetings about the frustration of dealing with this type of thing, not having a firm plan, a level of understanding between the city and the developers and builders. We need to erase those secrets and get a plan out on paper. And eventually we need to evaluate our form of city government to make sure we're providing the best service possible. Natalie brought up my commercial. You can go to my Facebook page and see one of my TV commercials on there. It's a good picture of me, good video of me. But I say that it's not time for radical change. What I mean by that is this. We have a number of things underway. We have accomplished a great deal in the last 4 years. We are on a path. A radical change would be to stop on that path and change directions. From reading Natalie's platform and to see what we have going on, I'm not sure we have all that much in common. So an abrupt change here would be radical change. Thank you, and vote for Steve.
Ms. Stites means you have the floor.
Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight, for spending it with us and discussing Rapid City politics here. I just want to add a couple of things to what we've talked about this evening. And I think that I think it's important to recognize that improving our race relations will improve our economy. It will improve our quality of life. And that race relations and stereotypes, they all play a role in cloaking what the real dangers are to us as human beings. We are all afraid of crime. We are all afraid of losing our property. And in fact, many people who you would consider the criminals, they're in fact the most victimized people in our society. And they certainly were victimized as children. In terms of Rapid City needing that expertise in human services, that is what I definitely have to offer the city in bringing us into a more prosperous future. Cloaking the criminality that spans race, ethnicity, classes, and other social groups with this stereotypes that it's a Native American issue doesn't get us anywhere. And what I'm proposing is to move us past that. I think that our economic development tables need to have small businesses there. They need to have working families represented. They need to have our colleges and universities and our educators at the table. I've compared Rapid City's economic development plans to other cities of comparable size and diversity, and we're not meeting the mark. We maybe have a C. I think we need to talk about looking at fatality review. Fatality review teams as an issue around to address MMIW, to address the people dying on the streets because they're cold. Looking at why did this fatality happen? Why has this person's life been lost? And how much system engagement and contact have they had throughout their life? I understand that one victim of a shooting had had 32 incidents with law enforcement by the time he died. That can be that information can be used to our benefit as a Rapid City government in looking at how services and systems can improve to prevent homicide, to prevent fatality, and to improve life and preserve life and protect it. Another topic I wanted to just bring up in my closing as well is this idea of street repair now. You know, there's a lot of talk about how our roads are and $2 million and infrastructure and all these different types of things. And I understand from our city leaders that the arterial roads of Mount Rushmore, downtown, and Omaha are definitely the most important to us economically. And what I propose then in terms of looking at, if I go into a pothole and I only have one working car to my family, when I hit that pothole and my axle goes out, that's an emergency to me, that's a crisis. It may not be a crisis for Rapid City or the Rapid City Council, but it is for me and my family. And so what I propose is shifting some of those resources over to our 11 incorporated neighborhood associations and looking at how we can improve those roads, because when neighborhood associations have it, they're gonna know what the priorities are for their community and for the neighborhood. that is much more better than the city council can at this point, and according to my review and all of the citizens I've been able to talk to throughout my campaign. And I offer that too as just a way of you being able to ascertain how I think in terms of problem solving. I really reject the idea that I represent radical change. In fact, I am here participating. I came back to South Dakota to offer my skills and education, not only to my family, not only to my well-being as an individual, but to the community and to the city at large. And I can tell you from the moment that we decided to run, the moment we declared our candidacies, we have been standing shoulder to shoulder with non-natives and natives throughout the course of our campaign. All of Rapid City is in need of the leadership that I can provide. And I don't say that from an arrogant standpoint or a lack of humility. I offer my leadership in the most humble way possible because I do believe that I have the viewpoint, the skills, the perspective, and the lack of political baggage or loyalty that one might find amongst other type of politicians. So with that, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you both, and thank all of you. This is the largest of these gatherings that I've gotten to participate in, certainly as it relates to City Council. And I very much want to thank the Chamber of Commerce, the North Rapid Civic Association, Lock Hills A-Team, Homeslice, and Western Dakota Tech for hosting tonight's forum and making it a joint operation. Having 125 to 135 people in a room shows what Rapid City can be. It shows the accessibility of your candidates. And I would encourage you to take this moment to say, if you were interested enough to be here tonight, then make sure that you're interested enough to stay engaged in city government, in county government, in state legislative races. It's wonderful to see this many people participating, and it's only through this participation that our government becomes better. So thank all of you for being here as well.
You're welcome.